Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Life Wrap-Up. Joe Samaniego here along with Matthew Bro, Ben Schneider, and Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. We're going to get to the chat room comments, especially for everyone tuning in for NASCAR. But Dima saying, yes, Pecco Bagnaia crashed. It's game over. Not exactly yet. We'll talk MotoGP, but we're going to first talk about NASCAR and the crazy Texas Motor Speedway race. Kobe, I know we joked a little bit about Texas barbecue, about 6 hours, you have ribs. This race took a really long time. Those ribs would have been done before the race was over, it felt.
Yeah, and I have a feeling tonight's show is going to be more like Grid Live Wrap-Up after dark. And it was a chaotic and unexpected day-to-night race at Texas Motor Speedway for the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 500. And just like the All-Star race, we saw more controversy, which left a lot of people feeling frustration. Before we race recap itself, we have an update on the scary crash involving Rick Ware racing driver Cody Ware. In turns 3 and 4, Ware got loose, overcorrected the car, and went head-on into the outside wall. Then he went sliding onto pit road into the pit wall, nearly hitting the inside wall opening, leading to the garage area. But luckily, Ware was able to get out of the car slowly, and he went down to the ground before being placed onto a stretcher and loaded into the ambulance. And here's the good news. Cody Ware was checked and released from the infield care center. Bob Pockers from Fox Sports added Ware didn't suffer any broken bones or a concussion, but he did feel some discomfort in his ankle. While Tyler Reddick ended up winning the race, the biggest story coming out of Texas was the number of blown tires in this race, a recurring theme this year. Goodyear brought a different tire compound compared to the All-Star race. We saw a total of 16 cautions, and almost all of them for tire-related issues. A lot of blown tires ruined the days of Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick, and Martin Truex Jr., all three of those drivers blowing a tire while leading the race. So 2 different events at this track in 2022. Both events left people feeling frustrated and unhappy. Starting with you, Ben, some of the drivers have talked about possible changes to Texas Motor Speedway this weekend. Is it officially time for another reconfiguration, even if it's a clone of Atlanta?
Well, to quote the great Brock Beard from NASCAR Info after the Knoxville truck race this year, what was that? I mean, what on earth did we just see? I mean, that was a bottom 5 for sure race that I've ever watched in my lifetime, maybe hovering around 3rd. I would say 2008 Brickyard 400, 2019 Clash, and then this race. This was worse than the All-Star race. This race actually means something. This race is in the middle of the playoffs. This race could have championship implications, and this race, bare minimum, didn't have a controversial finish where a driver won the race twice, the second time without the window net attached. I know we're going to talk about the tires in the follow-up here, so I'll try not to ramble on too much about those, but whether it's the track surface or the track configuration, it seems like nowadays, since the post-reconfiguration of Texas Motor Speedway, we talk about this pretty much every time we go there. The racing is absolutely terrible. Nobody looks forward to this event anymore. It's a shame because Texas used to put on some great races. I think to the IndyCar fans, it was probably the second biggest oval on the schedule after the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That's probably fair to most people. It's a shame because it was a really great circuit, a really great venue that created some good memories, and now it's a shell of its former self. And, I think, Kobe, to answer the question about a reconfiguration, I think the only thing that would be worse than what we have right now is a clone of Atlanta Super Speedway, if you will, Atlanta 2.0. I think that's probably what they're going to end up going with. We don't need another Atlanta, if you ask me. If we have that, You're going to have super speedway pack style racing, ideally, if the reconfiguration is a success. If you're trying to clone Atlanta, success, of course, used, you can define success however you want to define success. But I think, if we do that, what do we have? 8 super speedway pack races on the schedule out of 36. That's almost a quarter of the schedule being racing like that. And, you talked about Cody Ware as well. I mean, with the safety issues of a next-gen car, is that what we really want? Even if fans like that kind of racing, is that something that we want to be putting onto the driver schedules here? 8 races where you have these high speeds and these pack races and you can get these massive accidents. I don't think very many people will be on board with that. Fans might find it exciting. They might find it entertaining. And I know that that's the business that NASCAR is in these days, just as much as sport. Our own Adam Lemery saying an embarrassing race at Texas. I know Adam joined the short little IG live I had a little bit earlier tonight and said the exact same thing there. Embarrassing is one word for it: pathetic, incompetent, atrocity. Stop me whenever you like. I mean, this race was absolutely horrible. There was a great reply to Jeff Gluck, one of Jeff Gluck's tweets saying, "Don't even run the pole this week. We all know what it's going to be." Like I said, I think it was worse than the All-Star race, and we all know that was 10, 11, 12%. Yes, on that one, I'll say the same thing that I said on the Encore show after the All-Star race. If you liked this race, please comment in the chat room. Please leave a comment below. Please come to me. Tell me what you saw from this race that you enjoyed, because I would genuinely love to hear it. I would love to get that perspective, because I can't find anything. I don't know what we do with this place other than bulldoze it and rebuild it from the ground up, or turn it into a Walmart and race in the parking lot and have a street race there. That would certainly be more entertaining than what we got tonight. This was absolutely, absolutely horrible. I've lost all patience. I've lost all control. It's after 10:30. I'm going to stop rambling, let Matthew answer so that we can end the show earlier and get off the air. But it was awful, to answer the question bluntly, short, sweet, and to the point. Absolutely horrible. Got to do something. The status quo is not working.
I mean, I loved every single second of that, Ben. And I think what Richard Childress has to do is call one of Tyler Reddick's old sponsors, Caterpillar, and bring down the bulldozers, because he won. That's it. We don't need Texas anymore. You could do whatever you want to. You want to throw dirt on it. You want to throw something on it. Just don't let people drive there. And I was thinking, I mean, I'm a big fan personally of super speedway racing. I like it. But now checking like what all our conversation was today with like the health risks and the safety, Cody Ware, we're like all of us were pretty sure Cody Ware, with these next gen cars, if he was 4 feet earlier hitting that inside of pit wall, we could be having a whole different conversation right now. And that's a tough thing. I don't want to see Texas Speedway Motor Speedway become a super speedway and become Atlanta solely because of the safety risk. You've seen Alex Bowman. I guarantee you Cody Ware said that the hardest hits they've ever had. Then when you go to Atlanta, Bubba Wallace, Kurt Busch hit the wall pretty hard at the end of the Atlanta race that William Byron won. It was just terrible. And Alexander, that's funny. The best part of this race was Logano finishing second to a Chevy driver. Hey, to each their own. I think everyone had a good race who finished in the top 3, especially Justin Haley, who didn't get any media coverage whatsoever. But obviously that's a whole nother thing. But to answer Kobe's question about the configuration, it's time. But I think like what Kyle Larson said when I said on the pre-race show, it's time to just not have the race here. Do something, turn it into a road course. NASCAR loves road courses. I mean, the Xfinity Series, I think 24% of the races next season are road courses for them. So, I mean, would you rather see 8 super speedway races or would you rather see 12 road courses? As a fan, I would take the former, but for safety risks, I would take the latter in that situation. But yeah, Texas is a no-go for me. I was very upset as a NASCAR fan like Ben, just watching it. I think Kobe and I were young. We're all young here, but I was only like 6 years old when the 2008 Indy race happened, so I don't really recall it, but I guarantee you if I look it up, I will be very ashamed as well. But yeah, let's leave Texas. No more. Congrats to Tyler Reddick. And Ben, you got a point. I'm done with my point, though.
I want to follow up real quick. I'm glad you brought that up, Matthew. At the bare minimum, the 2008 Brickyard 400 race control had the sensibility to throw competition cautions every 10 to 12 laps right before the tires were about to blow. Now, I don't know that. I mean, obviously, back then we knew that it was going to be an issue coming into the race. I don't know if Goodyear or NASCAR could have anticipated that before the race began today, but at the bare minimum in that race, yeah, you could barely get a green flag run going because they were going to throw the competition caution. But at the same time, those competition cautions prevented there from being even more blowouts than there were. So, I mean, I guess I could see an argument for this race even being worse than the '08 Brickyard 400. And that might be blasphemous to the fans and the stock car fans in Indianapolis, but I mean, it was awful. I mean, there's no way around it.
I mean, especially with the tire, and then I'll go back to Cody with the. I just want to bounce off what you said. I mean, they were saying 35 laps, and all of a sudden the tires were just not good anymore. Like, that's a joke when you think about it. Like, not to be like very overly aggressive right now, but that's a joke when you're racing 500 miles and you can't make 35 laps with all of a sudden the leader, 4 liters just spinning, hitting the wall. It's kind of dumb. And we thought Bristol was bad. And then in my head, I'm like, how can NASCAR and Goodyear make this worse? And then Sunday, the 25th, whatever today is, came, and then that's exactly what happened. But that's all I got to say about the reconfiguration part of this question.
Yes, and if they do decide to reconfigure, I think it'll be a good idea to go back to what they had before that. Like Ben was saying, we saw some really great racing at Texas Motor Speedway in the past, and even before they switched to this current configuration, a lot of people question, like, why would you change this? And I guess the answer was, well, we want Texas Motor Speedway to be unique or whatever and be different than the other mile and a half on the schedule. And unfortunately, what we have right now didn't work out, but I think it wouldn't hurt to go back to what you used to have. And Matthew brought up the possibility to turn it into a road course. I know when I was playing Project 2's video game, I was able to run the Texas road course on there. It was an interesting circuit, but I think it would really need some updates in order to really put on a good race. It's a really awkward circuit that they had on Project Cars 2 there, but overall, I think the drivers really want to see something different at Texas Motor Speedway. The fans want to see something different as well, and we'll see where they decide to go with this. But like Ben was saying, I have a feeling they're going to be heading towards the realm of entertainment, and that might mean another mini super speedway, another Atlanta Motor Speedway with the higher banking. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that, but we'll see what they all decide. And a follow-up question: should Goodyear take responsibility for the number of blown tires we've seen, not just in this race, but all season long? Are the teams at fault for being too aggressive with the setups and air pressures, or could we really just blame both parties?
I mean, I feel like you can blame both, right? I mean, at the end of the day, these are new tires. This is a whole new car setup. But you can't really blame the teams for not knowing something like this is going to happen. I mean, who would have thought that? I'm pretty sure every single driver on the circuit, all 36 of the charter entries, have had a tire issue at some point. And I think Goodyear's probably at fault. And noticing like Denny Hamlin's rant on Twitter, I didn't get to see the video. I believe Ben retweeted, but I know that the picture that he sent to our group about Hamlin saying that just all the excuses are what was your fault, talking about the person they interviewed about Goodyear. So I feel like you blame them, but it's not like you can switch Goodyear. Obviously, it's all easier said than done. I could say right now, bring back Hoosier for 2023. That's not possible because of how tire negotiations, how contract, everything's so much easier said than done. But we saw Texas, I think the All-Star race at Texas, we saw Texas essentially lose the right to the All-Star race for the next season, even though they already had like won it or whatever, they were going to have it. And then North Wilkesboro came along. Thank you, Dale Jr., by the way. You're the best for that. But I think this race could have proven that Texas Motor Speedway, unless they fix something, could be probably and should be taken off the schedule with all the blown tires. I just hope we don't go in the It's going to be horrible, absolutely horrible, if we have these tire issues going 195 miles per hour at Talladega. It's one of the most dangerous tracks on the circuit. We've seen wrecks, we've seen flips, especially in this car. I do not want to go to Talladega with Goodyear tires, especially with everything that's been going on the past 2 weeks. Bristol, not terrible because it's a short track. You would consider it maybe safer, less speed. Texas, you're getting like worse, and then now we hit Talladega. What's going to happen? I know that's a question for later, but it makes me worried. So, but yes, I blame Goodyear. I don't really blame the teams as much because they're just getting what they're given with these quote cheap parts. I don't know what Kevin Harvick said. He probably said a little bit of expletives there, but I guess you guys get my point here.
Well, guys, what happens if we go to Phoenix and we have this issue?
Oh.
What if 1x1 championship 4 cars are leading at Phoenix and they blow a tire and they go into the wall? They go spinning into the infield, hit the inside wall, or have a problem, they have to come to the pits, and it affects the entire. I mean, talk about beating a dead horse. You know how I feel about the playoff system, but in particular, a one race winner take all championship. Imagine if we have similar issues at Phoenix as what we had today, what we had at Bristol. You want to talk about attrition. I know that word got thrown around a lot today. It seemed like playoff drivers were dropping like flies at Darlington. That's 3 out of the 4 races to start the playoffs. And you can throw Reddick in there. I know Reddick was out of the first round, so there's a little bit of ambiguity. Is he really a playoff driver? Is he not? But we've yet to see somebody win to advance to the next round, because it's all been drivers who either weren't in the playoffs in the first round or got eliminated in the first round, with Reddick winning today. Dustin Long got an interview. Matthew, I think you were referring to this, what I put in the chat here, of a screenshot of what Denny Hamlin responded with. Goodyear's Greg Stucker on the tire issues tonight at Texas. Denny Hamlin responding, saying, "No excuses except for the 10 you listed besides yourself." So we know how he feels about the tire issues. But I think anytime a representative from Goodyear is being interviewed by the media, it's probably not a good thing. And we can just leave it at that.
Yeah, it's probably best to just leave it at that. But I want to read a quote Richard Childress said today about all the tire failures. So Richard Childress said that there's a fine line to push that limit. It wasn't the tire as much as it is trying to be as competitive as you can. In my personal opinion of it, I would actually blame like both sides of this. Regards to Goodyear tires, obviously can't handle the loads going into the corner since it's obviously much different than last year, and then the teams are trying to push the limit as far as they can with the setups and the air pressures that we've been talking about. So I really think that both sides could be blamed in this instance, but I also like to see Goodyear take a little bit more ownership as well of this issue and say, just it been I guess a PR issue, so Goodyear doesn't look as bad. So if we saw a little bit more of Goodyear taking responsibility, I think, and coming up with a plan for next season to try to address all the issues we saw all throughout 2022, then maybe we can feel better about where this is headed. But right now, going to Talladega next week, lots of concerns about safety. And Matthew, you were saying you were concerned about tires potentially blowing out at Talladega. And so far this year, with the Daytona races and the earlier Talladega race, I don't think we saw any major issues with tires. So hopefully we'll be spared tire issues when we get to Talladega next week. And we also had a bit of drama during the race between Denny Hamlin and William Byron. Byron wasn't pleased with how Hamlin raced him. Then things went to an entirely different level. Under caution, the cars were slowing down. Byron got into the back of Hamlin, spun him on the front stretch. Byron admitted to wanting to show his displeasure there, but he claimed he didn't mean to spin Denny out. Ben, was NASCAR wrong for not penalizing Byron for spinning Hamlin under caution?
Look, I'm not William Byron. I guess only he knows for sure, but it seemed like a pretty hard tap if he didn't mean to turn the guy around. I don't know what he meant to do. It seems like, a much lesser tap would have done just as good a job of sending a message if that's all he really wanted to do there and didn't actually mean to spin him out. But, I think, Kobe, you brought this up in our chat as well. If that happens at, your local weekly race or, an unsanctioned event somewhere, there's a good chance they'll still send you to the back of the pack, or they'll penalize you 2 laps or do something to you to send a message that, people's lives are at stake here with safety issues, and we're handling, race cars going, the speeds that they're going. We can't be doing that. We can't be messing around here. NASCAR seems to be consistently inconsistent when it comes to ruling on those things. And, sometimes they penalize drivers. I mean, you want to talk about something that happened at Texas. I'm sure Kyle Busch fans haven't forgotten the truck race with Hornaday in 2011. Probably a bit more egregious than what we saw here today, just spinning Hamlin into the infield off Byron's part. But, I think probably, the fact that Byron got absolutely nothing isn't right. And, Denny Hamlin tried to go back up to regain his position. And I think his team was even admitting, we understand that, we've lost the track position. We didn't maintain our speed under caution. We have to follow to the back. But for 24 not to get anything, when they're the ones that instigated spinning us out, I know it was retaliation for being put in the wall, what happened on track half a lap earlier. But, I think NASCAR has to send a message at some point and do something to let drivers know, and especially, to go back to Cody Ware and the issues with safety and the concerns that we've been having. I mean, I know it's under caution. The speeds are going to be a little bit less, but, you still can't be doing that. And something needs to come down to let people know that, it's going to be unacceptable going forward.
Yeah, and the way I guess Kyle Busch put it on Twitter is like, it's all circumstantial. It depends on who the driver was. I mean, I think William Byron should have definitely been penalized, and I think NASCAR was wrong for that. I think NASCAR was wrong for not allowing Hamlin to regain that position, considering Byron. We saw the in-car footage, and Byron may have slowed down because of the caution, but he could have avoided Hamlin if he wanted to, but he chose to drive right into him. And I don't know if it was Parker Kligerman asked the question. I almost lost it there, guys. He asked the question to William Byron, kind of like what we love to do in media, get that answer out of someone. And he was pretty much like, did you do it on purpose? And Byron kind of said yes, but he was like, he didn't mean to wreck him, but he meant to hit him, not maybe to rattle his cage, bringing back the old days before I was born. But that, I think it was an issue about that. And I think another issue, which I brought up to Kobe before this, was we talk about all this stuff going on, no penalties. We didn't like Noah Gragson at Road America. It's all inconsistent, and that's the key word here, inconsistent. NASCAR picks and chooses who gets penalized, who doesn't. Noah Gragson took out, 13 cars at Road America. Then he got a penalty after the race. So should we see something for Byron after the race? Not sure yet. But another thing I wanted to point out is on pit road, a lot of us didn't realize it unless you saw it on Twitter, was Ty Gibbs took a hard left right into Ty Dillon, and Ty Dillon was very close to hitting a pit crew and a NASCAR official. And that's another driver, I feel like, Ty Gibbs, young, 19 years old. He's another driver that has not been penalized for a lot of his actions. He'll come on media and apologize, but I'm so sorry for what I did. I got to be better. But it's a continuous thing. We saw it at Kansas, ramming into Justin Allgaier because he thought he got hit, took that hard left. Bubba Wallace didn't have power steering, his teammate, so that hard left wouldn't have happened for him. But for Ty Gibbs, it was just like, that's another thing I feel like we should discuss here, is the fact that there's another driver here who is doing stuff what you would consider intentional and not getting penalized. I don't know if NASCAR is just overlooking it because of who he is, or it's just all circumstantial, all inconsistent. They should be handing out penalties. They hand out penalties for the tires. They hand out penalties. They eject crew chiefs, whatever. But for some reason, when somebody tries to maybe not inflict harm, but clearly damage another vehicle and put someone in harm, NASCAR just looks the other way. So it's so inconsistent, guys. I feel like you guys feel the same way about it. It's unfortunate as a fan when you see this stuff.
Well, Matthew, I think it's part of the culture that's been created. I think drivers like Ty Gibbs, for example, I think he turns 20 next week or in a couple of weeks here. He's still a kid, just starting out and working his way up through the ranks. I know he's done a handful of cup races even now, but he expects to be able to get away with that. And I can't even hardly blame him for it. The culture has shifted now. The vast majority of these young drivers, they're not fixing up their own equipment or working on their own cars like guys were back in the day. And NASCAR doesn't come down on them when they do these kinds of things. So why should they expect to, be reprimanded for it? And, of course they think they can get away with it. And, 9 times out of 10, it seems like these days they can. And nothing's going to change until NASCAR steps in and says, we have to set some ground rules here. It can't just be boys have at it all the time. And we need to do something about it.
Yeah. I think it also comes with Ty's one of those drivers that I think we're all about 95% sure that he's guaranteed a cup ride. I think as like a fan perspective and opinion, maybe drivers like that who know that they're guaranteed a ride, at least in some series, have that little bit of a chip on their shoulder, right? Like I don't think Ty Dillon would do something like that, intentionally wreck someone, because Ty Dillon doesn't know what his future looks like once the end of November happens. But someone like Ty Gibbs, who's in the running for an Xfinity championship, rumored to be driving the 18, I think he knows that he has a chance to be. He's obviously one of the best. I would argue, in my opinion, that Ty Gibbs could be one of the best generational talents we've ever seen in the sport. But he's only 19 years old, so he's got a lot of maturing to do on the racetrack. But that was just something I wanted to point out about, like, I think it all depends on who the driver is. Like Kyle Busch with the whole Ron Hornaday situation. Kyle Busch knew his position, who he is as a driver, knew that something can happen and he won't be like kicked off a team for it or removed and replaced very easily. There's drivers that have their seat and they know they have their seat. But that's all I got to say, at least my opinion bringing to this show today.
Yeah, and definitely young Ty Gibbs has a lot to learn, and we also hope that someone will talk to Ty Gibbs and tell him why that wasn't the smartest idea to get retaliation against Ty Dillon there on pit road. I guess Ty Gibbs wasn't really pleased with Dillon for pulling out on pit road the way like that, and then just turned a hard left. And we're very lucky that he didn't hit him even harder. Shove him into that pit crew as you mentioned, Matthew. That could have been a really bad situation. So this time it was a lucky escape. But next time Ty Gibbs has tempers flaring on pit road, he may not get away with it like he did this time around. And getting back to the William Byron Denny Hamlin situation, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was last year, the year before that. Didn't Quinn Half get penalized at Martinsville for wrecking somebody under caution? I think he got held several laps. So and it just goes back to the inconsistencies. If you're gonna penalize Quinn Half at Martinsville for spinning someone under caution, where the speeds are a lot lower, and Texas Motor Speedway the speeds are quite high, and you're not gonna penalize William Byron for what he did under caution to Denny Hamlin. I just don't get it. And also, Jeff, I'm going to read a tweet from Jeff Gluck from The Athletic. He said NASCAR's Scott Miller acknowledges that they completely missed the William Byron Denny Hamlin incident and likely would have taken action if they seen it. They didn't see what happened until that already gone back to green because everyone was still looking at the Truex incident. But however, Miller said that William Byron could still be penalized after that. So Ben, if you wanted to respond to that right there.
NBC was all over that after they panned a Truex. I mean, how could they have missed? I mean, are they not watching the TV? Do they not have access to that? I mean, even if they didn't, I feel like they would have seen that, the 24 and 11 were kind of leaning on each other. I don't look, I'm not in the control room. I don't know what their situation is, but I have a very hard time buying that excuse as to why, that just sounds to me like fancy talk for saying we dropped the ball. We should have penalized him. We just don't want to admit it. I don't know. I have a very hard time accepting that as a reason, to say you missed that. I mean, NBC was all over that, or USA, I guess I should say. They were on cable today, but whatever. I don't understand that at all.
I can agree just to add a point. Like, were they like this in the booth? Like, I can't see you guys, so they must have been doing the same thing up there. I just don't get how they would have missed it. And the question I want to ask you two, though, is if they do penalize Byron and if they do penalize Hamlin, what's the penalty going to be? Where in the playoffs, do you take away how many points? You don't want to like completely take Byron out of the playoff race, but you don't want to like only dock 5 points. So I don't know what they're going to do if they're going to fine Hendrick, but what's money going to do? Nothing. It won't change anything. These teams have a lot of money for a reason. If you fine them however much, it's not going to change a darn thing. So I don't know. What does NASCAR have to do, in your guys' opinion, to really put the hammer down?
Dale Jr. said a naughty word for crap in 2004, and he got docked 25 points. So, if that happens, but guys are out here messing with their actual cars and they're not doing anything, then I mean, where's the consistency there? I wouldn't be a fan of docking points. I would say maybe hold him for one lap, and if he can work around and get the lucky dog. I mean, how many cautions do we see tonight? I feel like Byron could have put himself potentially in position to do that, and then work his way back up from there. So that disadvantages him during the race, but not in the actual point standings until he has a final result. I guess if it happens earlier in the race, it might take him out of contention for stage points, but we were in the last stage anyway. So I don't know. I feel like you can't just like let him, like, at least send him to the tail end of the longest line or something like that. But to not do anything when they've penalized much less severe circumstances in the past, and then to say that they missed it, I'd have a very hard time accepting that.
Yeah, who else has a very hard time accepting that? Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin just responded to it, saying they missed it, ? What a effing joke. It played on the screen 5 times during caution, so Denny Hamlin is definitely not buying that.
They saw Big Hoss at Texas Motor Speedway. Yeah. Isn't that like the world record for the biggest TV screen? I mean, it's unbelievable, man. This is unbelievable.
Yeah. Totally unbelievable. And we'll see what NASCAR decides to do. If anything, I would expect them to possibly find William Byron and maybe put him and Hamlin on probation for the rest of the season. But I don't expect anything significant like docking points. And Adam Limmery said he believes that William Byron should have been sent to the longest line. I totally agree with you, Adam. As we were saying, you see this stuff happen at your local short track, like in their late models, super late models, or any of these type of series we see around the country. You wreck somebody intentionally, or they think you did, they'll send you to the very back, or if it's really bad, you get parked for the night. And just like we've been saying, just a lot of inconsistent calls here, and we'll see if they can do better if we get into situations later on this season. After four playoff races, we still haven't seen a playoff driver win and lock themselves into the next round. Joe Logano at the top of the standings, only 30 points above the cut line. Everyone else is 20 or less above the cut line. Chase Elliott, eighth in the championship, only has a 4-point advantage. Then you get Chase Briscoe, 4 points below, 11 points behind Frost and Cindric. Chris Herbel, minus 29, and Alex Bowman, minus 30. The next race is the highly unpredictable Talladega Super Speedway. Anyone can win. Anyone can get caught up in trouble, and nobody knows what to expect. How frustrating must it be for the playoff drivers to know that nobody is safe entering Talladega?
I mean, I'm going to show you an action. What we call this, called punching air. I feel like every playoff driver right now is punching air, especially guys like Christopher Bell, right? Someone who is, like, when we saw the first round, like, this kid's going to run away with it. There's no doubt he's going to be in the championship four. And then all of a sudden he's 29 points below the cut line. Like, where did that happen? So I think a lot of drivers are definitely frustrated, especially even though Joey Logano has the most amount of points, I believe, I feel like he's the most because he clearly does not like super speedway racing, because you have guys, I mean, we saw what Cody Ware, Noah Gragson finished in the top 5, top 6 at Daytona. I don't think Logano likes this, so I feel like if somebody who's that far ahead in the points does not like this happening, I feel like none of the playoff drivers are going to like it. And I feel like also the safety, I think, is a big issue, seeing what happened with Cody Ware today. Like, even Chase Elliott said that as long as I said something, like, I'm obviously paraphrasing, but something like, as long as everyone's safe, everyone's okay, but he doesn't care what else happens. Like, that's going to be a huge focus for a lot of the drivers this week, or this coming week, next Sunday or Saturday, whenever the race is. But, I mean, it's got to be frustrating, especially for those guys who are on the cut line, especially even for the guys who are so far ahead. We saw Christopher Bell absolutely kicking butt and taking names, and now he's got to fight for his life right now. And what is he, 11th now in the top 12? Something like that in terms of points. Bowman, too. They were just all doing so well, and now they got to fight for it. It's just a lot of drivers, you want to – Talladega is obviously that race, same with, like, Daytona. You want to go into it where you want to be patient. You want to – hopefully something happens that you avoid. You want to win. But now with, like, the guys who are fighting, like Briscoe, Cindric, all those guys, they got to really get up front, get those stage points, because now every however many third of the race matters, not just the finish. And technically, with obviously if you win, the finish counts. But yeah, I think everyone's frustrated, to answer your question in a very long statement.
What a second round. What a round of 12. A race of attrition, if that's the word we're using it, what is generally considered the worst track on the schedule. A race at Talladega Super Speedway, one of the biggest wild cards imaginable, and then a race at the Charlotte Roval around their infield road course, where we've seen all sorts of, crazy stuff happen in the first few races that we've had there. I know we've only been going there for a few years, but what a second round. I mean, you want to talk about feeling safe. I don't know how anybody can feel safe at this point, especially considering a driver who's already out of the playoffs is the only one that's won in this round so far. I mean, I keep going back to that quote. I mean, on the subject of Denny Hamlin, there's that famous line from Radioactive at Martinsville in 2015 after his then teammate at the time, Matt Kenseth, got into Joey Logano and paid him back. He said, "I can't get over what this sport has come to, and how do you crown a real champion now? It's just the wild, wild west." That's that's what we're feeling right now. I mean, I just don't understand how, we can look at what we have in this round in particular, where there are so many variables, there are so many things that can go wrong out of your control, whether it's a tire issue today or being taken out in the big one, or one of the multiple big ones that we will probably see at Talladega, or the chaos at the Roval. I mean, we can have a driver. I mean, Kyle Larson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we were sitting on this very program a year ago talking about Kyle Larson, who was obviously the dominant driver of last season. I think there were questions as to whether or not he might be in danger of falling out and not making it to the round of 8. Now, of course, he went on to advance and obviously won the championship. And I'm thankful he did, because he was certainly the best driver over the course of the entire season last year. But, you know, in a year where we've had, you know, unprecedented levels of parity, we could have very easily gotten a 20th different winner today if the rain had, you know, stayed in the area a little bit longer, or if Texas didn't have lights. Michael McDowell, we could be talking about him winning the race right now. It's been an unpredictable year. Very few drivers have been able to establish themselves and pull ahead. And to know that not a single driver in the field can even remotely be considered safe going into Talladega and then the Charlotte Roval, nobody's going to be sleeping easy for the next 2 weeks.
And if I can bounce off that really quick, Kobe, then I'll let you take over. It's really weird to think going into Talladega, like last season with the playoffs, correct me if I'm wrong, but every single driver up until Talladega who won in the playoffs was in the playoffs. And then we saw Bubba Wallace get his first win. This year, it's the complete opposite. Every single driver who has won has either been in the playoffs and then obviously not in anymore, aka Tyler Reddick, or didn't even qualify for the playoffs. So, like, this is not only is this NASCAR's, quote, greatest season, according to the USA commercial, it's arguably the most confusing, unexpected, just, that's all I can say, quote, A-A-H, exclamation point, exclamation point. I don't even know how to describe it, but that's all I want to say is it's just, you don't know what's going to happen. Very surprising with this. You never know. David Reagan could win next week. It'd be really funny if he did. Don't quote me on that, though.
Yeah, and definitely none of the playoff drivers have to feel safe right now, but I'm sure all the drivers don't feel safe going to Talladega in general. You know, we've been talking about all the hits, well, the much harder hits with this new next gen car. To see what happened with Cody Ware today was definitely very unsettling. Heading to Talladega, we know what's going to happen there. Ben talked about we'll probably see multiple big ones next week, and this is one track where you're definitely going to see some crashes. You might get lucky now and then where you see a race where you don't see any of the big events, but the scene today with Cody Ware, that was certainly really frightening, and to like compare certain incidents, especially that happened at Texas Motor Speedway in the past. I'm sure a lot of you remember what happened with Michael McDowell back in the 2000s about that happened at Texas Motor Speedway when he hit the wall and then had that scary barrel roll multiple times, and he was able to get out of that car and walk away. Cody Ware, massive hit in the wall, and comes back down onto pit road, and they had to put him on a stretcher to get him out of there. And you definitely see that Michael McDowell's crash was obviously much worse than Cody Ware's, but Ware was the one taken out of the stretcher, and McDowell was the one who walked away years ago. And going to Talladega, there's certainly going to be a lot of concerns about safety, and hopefully everything will be okay, but you never really know, especially when you have a growing list of drivers talking about all of these hard hits. And Adam Limmery says that it's too unpredictable, one of the craziest seasons that you've seen in a long time. Yeah, Adam, it's certainly been a truly unpredictable, crazy season. I'm sure when we're on the wrap-up show next Sunday at Talladega, we're going to be talking about another really crazy moment that happened in the state of Alabama. And Matthew, I understand we have to let you go soon, so before you do, what's your good one shining moment from this racing weekend?
I mean, it's pretty dang hard, Kobe, to figure out something that was good about this weekend. Especially, I'm going to stick with NASCAR. I'm going to stick with, well, I mean, if we go Xfinity Series, obviously Noah Gragson kicking butt. First time in like 39 years that happened. I'm going to say for this race specifically, anyone associated with Tyler Reddick. Because obviously, although everyone says he's coming back to RCR or whatever, I think this was a great opportunity for Tyler Reddick to try out for maybe a Toyota team, maybe 2311, maybe the 18 car with Gibbs. You never know. Well, I think most of the people in the industry know. I think anyone associated with Tyler Reddick getting his first career win, not on a road course, his third career win of the season and career win and of the season. I mean, it's really remarkable what Tyler Reddick's doing. So he's my one shining moment, probably the only shining moment from Texas Motor Speedway. And also, Garrett Smithley finished 23rd. He's keeping those Rick Ware cars intact, and you got to appreciate that at the end of the day.
Yeah. Definitely have to appreciate drivers, especially with the smaller teams being able to get the car to the finish without any major issues happening, because it's a lot more expensive for the smaller teams in the garage when you tear up a car versus a team like Hendrick Motorsports or Joe Gibbs Racing. They can just replace them, and rebuild them easily. While for the smaller teams, really difficult. So thank you for that, Matthew. We'll see you next time. And next up, MotoGP, and here's Joshua Burge with his thoughts on the MotoGP race in Japan.
Well, what an absolutely fantastic MotoGP race we saw here today as well. A true classic as well. First of all, on a personal note as well, my watch-long coverage, over 11,000 viewers as well. Absolutely blown away by that as well. And what a race as well. It certainly made me and Megan feel very much worthy of having to get up early as well to commentate on the race, because it was a true classic as well. From lights out, it was a good race, because Marc Marquez, as we predicted yesterday as well, with me, Julia and Joe talking about it as well, he again struggled at lights out as well, dropped down into 5th position on the opening lap as well. But what nobody expected as well was the fact that Jack Miller on the opening lap took the lead of the race and stayed there, taking his 4th ever career victory and his first win since the French Grand Prix of 2021 as well. Brad Binder as well on the podium as well, alongside as well with Johan Zarco as well. Good start actually from Brad Binder. He briefly had the lead as well, so mine and Julia's pick a winner was nearly right as well, but at least we were questioning about Marc Marquez as well, so we got 95% of that right, I would say as well. Further on in the race as well, weird things as well for Soda as well. His bike exploding as well, with fire ripping on underneath it as well. I had a look on the reasoning behind that as well. It was an oil leak as well, and a hole in the engine, and the oil leak that just fell out, the fuel caught fire as well, and just bang, all went in eruption as well. What me and Megan couldn't work out in the commentary is what was happening with Alex Rins. His transponder was going up and down, up and down, up and down several times as well. And then it seemed like he was a lap down. Then it seems like he wasn't. Well, he was a lap down, I'm delighted to say, because he had on his front wheel, part of the actual wheel steel hub was bent. So there was a hole in the tyre, and that over time caused a puncture. So he had a slow puncture on the front tyre. That's the reason he had to retire from the race. So a double DNF as well for Suzuki. Nakashima crashing out at turn 1 as well, and Dan Binder retiring in the pit lane were the only DNFs as well. Aleix Espargaro, a gearbox problem, leaving the grid. Similar thing happened to him in the warm-up session as well. He had to come in on the warm-up lap as well, change over to his second bike and get going again. He's currently under investigation, however, because on bike number 2, they'd left the fuel-saving map strategy on the bike, which meant he could see it throughout the race. And surprisingly, it didn't fall off because they're stuck on. So he could see that throughout the race as well. So they're now questioning if that was a cheat tactic, even though he might not have used it. The fact it was there, it kind of implies so. So Aleix Espargaro, who dropped back so many points to the championship today, could actually be more in trouble as well. He finished inside the points, but that could be taken away from him once again. Great day from Carl Crutchlow as well, getting another points finish as well. Only his second race back with Yamaha, with the With You Yamaha team as well, replacing Andrea Dovizioso, who retired. So good job from Carl Crutchlow there, proving he's still got the pace as well and still quick enough to be up there. Now let's talk about the championship protagonists as well, because that's really where it all changed up. And Bastianini as well was stuck in a battle with Bagnaia and Quartararo throughout the race as well. Eventually Quartararo finished in 8th position, 9th finished in Bastianini as well. So that could have closed that one down. We already talked about Aleix Espargaro, but what happened with Pecco Bagnaia, you ask? Well, Bagnaia was challenging all race behind Fabio Quartararo until the last lap of the race. He decided to do a do-or-die move on the inside line. He had problems with the front tyre overheating, down into turn 3, went on the inside line, the front dipped away from him, and out he went. He's 5th, I think, retirement of the year as well, and at a crucial time. He said on Twitter as well that, I know it was a mistake, it's come at a crucial time, I will learn from this, I will fight back from this. Problem is now, Quartararo has gained back points that he was taken away from him last time out. He's gained 8 points back here today over Bagnaia, more than that over as well to Bastianini and Aleix Espargaro. So now we came in for a 4-way fight. Realistically, it's a 2-way fight now with 4 races to go. There's a lot to work on next time time out in Thailand in 7 days' time as well, in order for Bagnaia, Bastianini, and Leishsberger to catch up to Quartararo. Anything can happen, and at Thailand, it's another tricky circuit as well. So next weekend is going to be key before we head over to Australia, Malaysia, and the season rounding out in Valencia. Anyway, what a race we had in MotoGP. Definitely worth the early start for.
And before we follow up on MotoGP, we have another comment here from Chrome Diesel, who I recognize from commenting on some of my own videos. Good to see you again. No, I don't enjoy the playoffs. I'm right there with you. I think it's just been far too chaotic, and this year certainly has been no exception. You could maybe even say it's been taken up another level beyond that. But of course, we'll continue to follow them nonetheless here at Grid Network, just as we are MotoGP. And Joe will now get an opportunity to get your thoughts on it. Mobility Resort Motegi, formerly known as Twin Ring Motegi, hosted MotoGP this weekend, their first visit of a track since 2019 before the pandemic. Marc Marquez won from the pole in this race, as he so often did in the mid to late 2010s. He started on the pole today, finished in fourth place. He fell back to fifth at one point, but was able to gain one spot back to equal his best finish of the year. So, Joe, what did you see from his performance today? Are you convinced that he's ready to contend for wins once again?
I do see him going out there contending for podium finishes, especially in Thailand next race weekend. He's won there the last 2 times MotoGP visited there. The big thing, though, when it comes for wins, I just don't see it, because the big thing, Ducati, we saw today Jack Miller was the lead Ducati, Jorge Martin, those two up front. He has to really carry that Honda on his back. I just don't think he could do it. And with all the questions about, is he 100%? He proved he could get a podium finish. He was very close to it today, in my opinion, overall. Just if that race was a little bit longer, I felt like he was going to get to Jorge Martin, Brad Binder. But the big thing is right now, Ducati, they're just looking too strong for Marquez and really for everyone. Marc Marquez, good to see him back on the track. A little bit of a slow start, but it was a lot smoother than the last race weekend. And overall, I feel like he's in good shape to at least race and contend.
Well, Marquez picked up a lot of points today. Jack Miller was the one who took the full 25 for a dominating win. His teammate, Pecco Bagnaia, tried to get around Fabio Quartararo on the last lap, lost the front end, ended up falling out of the race there. So, Joe, did he make a mistake by pushing too much? And can you still consider him one of the championship favorites at this point?
He was pushing way too much at the end. Like Joshua said, he lost 8 points with that mistake compared to if he had just stayed behind him. Yeah, Quartararo would have gained 2 points. But this is MotoGP. This isn't like NASCAR where every point position is awarded. Only the top 15 get points. So he dropped all the way out of the points. It's going to be very hard to have Fabio Quartararo to have a bad race and finish 15th or worse, unless you get a repeat of what we saw last race weekend where Fabio Quartararo went out on the first lap. Pecco Bagnaia, he has not really raced that well in Thailand. In fact, last 2 years we haven't been there. The year before that, 2018, Pecco brand new into MotoGP. Now with Ducati, I think Pecco's going to have a really hard challenge at Thailand. And I think when it comes to the championship hunt, is he a favorite? Today was the first time we saw him towards the back, 12th place, not in the front row, like the last 4 race weekends where he got the wins. He couldn't get to the front. Starting to, I think, show some weakness, where for Fabio Quartararo, he knows as long as Pecco is behind me, I'm in a better spot, even if I'm not winning the race. If Pecco's behind me, I'm in a good spot, and I feel he may not be the championship favorite. It might lean back to Quartararo.
Well, Joe, as you mentioned, Thailand is the next race weekend. The last time MotoGP race in Thailand was also in 2019. Marquez has won the past 2 races there. So, we've been talking about him and trying to get back to that level. You look at him as maybe a potential favorite if he can take a step forward. But who else do you think could be an early favorite for Thailand in the next race?
This is where I feel like it's just really starting to heat up a MotoGP. You look at Ducati. Pecco Bagnaia has a good qualifying effort. He's going to be up front. He could easily contend for the win. But Jack Miller, he's starting to come to life. I think Jack Miller could have a new wave of momentum. He can compete, but of course, if you got Pecco Bagnaia there, he's going to be getting the team orders, the priority to get the win. Fabio Quartararo, this might be a really great track for him to come back, because one of the big things, similar to Japan today, Several riders have not raced in Japan because of the pandemic the last 2 years. Same in Thailand. So this could be a really great opportunity for him as well. Marc Marquez, he has to be one of the favorites. But KTM, they looked really strong today. A lot of folks anticipate them to fall towards the back since it was sunny, dry conditions. Miguel Oliveira was running up towards the front, started faded towards the end. Brad Binder, get that podium finish. He's been solid all year long. I think really Thailand could be a very exciting race. Might still be a Ducati in the top split, but overall, I wouldn't count out a bunch of riders out. And really, it's going to come down to qualifying to see who gets into Q2 and where the top 12s all start.
Well, I know I'll certainly have my eye on Marc Marquez. It would be great to see him get back to that level that he was at just a few years ago. I know it's been a difficult couple of years for him with the injuries and everything, so great to see him back on the track, and we'll see what he can do going forward. As for right now, though, Joe, I'll pass it over to you. I believe we have updates on MotoGP and every other series we cover in the grid ranking at the conclusion of this week.
Yeah, the grid ranking week 26, and it's very interesting championship development this week occurring. Pecco Bagnaia fell to 5th, and the grid ranking is now out of reach of all MotoGP riders. No MotoGP rider could overcome Shane Van Gisbergen, even if Shane Van Gisbergen finishes outside the top 10 for the remaining races of the season. The same for NASCAR, with Todd Reddick getting the win. Chase Elliott, the highest rated one, at 20th. He gets in the top 20 just because Nia Bastianini falls out of the top 20. He is now 22nd. No NASCAR Cup Series driver could get the grid ranking World Championship. So this leaves essentially with Formula E and IndyCar both done. Only Formula One, World Rally Championship, and Jamie Chadwick from the W Series are still mathematically eligible. Now, both Jamie Chadwick and Kali Rovanpera would need to have essentially all the races they run, get victories, get the win, and Shane Van Gisbergen not finish in the top 10 for the remaining supercar races. So a tall ask for them to get the championship in the grid ranking. Kobe, starting with you. Are you surprised Jamie Chadwick is still this high in the grid ranking and a long shot potentially for the grid ranking World Championship?
Yeah, Joe, I'm really surprised, and correct me if I'm wrong. W Series isn't weighted the same as our other series, so that's really remarkable that Jamie Chadwick is able to do so well in the grid ranking. And I'm sure this would be a math project for you later on, but I wonder how high Jamie Chadwick would be right now if she was weighted the same as, say, like supercars, as we see with Shane Van Gisbergen, NASCAR, IndyCar, all of those different series that are part of our grid ranking World Championship, to see if she would potentially move up a little bit. But overall, Jamie Chadwick is having another remarkable season in the W Series. I expect her to take home the championship, and it looks like she may be moving on to bigger and better things. I know she recently just had that Indy Lights test, and she was cheesing really hard, big smile on her face, and talking about the challenge of the Indy Lights car. And it seems like she really enjoyed it, and we'll see where it goes from there, because Jamie doesn't have anything else to prove in the W Series. She's ready to take the next step in her racing career.
Take the next step. And a comment in the chat room from Chrome Diesel: seemed like Verstappen is destined to win the F1 title by October. I would have to agree with you. Depending on what happens in Singapore, he could wrap it up as early as Japan the following race weekend. Ben, speaking about Singapore, that's the next race weekend for Formula One and W Series this next weekend. Then we also have World Rally Championship. They're back. Rally New Zealand. Max Verstappen in F1, Jamie Chadwick in W Series, and Kali Rovanpera in World Rally Championship. Which driver do you feel is most likely to win their race in their respective series?
I don't know. I'm tempted to say all three. I know they certainly are capable of pulling that off. But of course, like I always say, don't take any World Rally Championship fantasy advice from me, because that's easily the series that I know the least about here at the grid ranking in terms of what we cover. But in terms of Formula One and the W Series, Verstappen and Chadwick have just been, on a whole nother level this year. But even I know Kali Rovanpera has, had a great season as well. So if I had to choose one, I guess I would lean Chadwick, because she's only lost one race this year. But then again, Max Verstappen is, like that comment in the chat room just said, he could clinch the championship, just within the next couple of races here. Probably will with the season that he's had. So, I'd lean Chadwick, but it could easily be Verstappen, or it could be Rovanpera. could be all three of them. Who knows? But they've all had fantastic seasons, and it could be any one of them.
And the very impressive part was Chadwick, the one race he didn't win, second place. So all wins and a second place finish. Like Kobe said, if she was weighted like all the other series in the grid ranking, it could be phenomenal what her score is. But of course, the W Series, they're using F3 chassis. One of the things we mentioned about World Rally Championship, Rally New Zealand, Shane Van Gisbergen making his World Rally debut as well. And before we went on the air, V8 Sleuth Connor O'Brien reported that Shane Van Gisbergen has confirmed talks with NASCAR. Trackhouse Racing, Justin Mark recently indicated that he has reached out to Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, doing his World Rally Championship. We know Trackhouse Racing, they're contending for a championship, but they also have Project 91. They brought in Kimi Räikkönen for Watkins Glen. And Shane Van Gisbergen, the casual fan may not heard about him because they don't follow Australian supercars, but for everyone that follow us here, and especially the grid ranking, they know he led most of last year and just about every race weekend this year in the grid ranking. Starting with you, Ben. Shane Van Gisbergen, not that well known compared to, say, Kimi Räikkönen, who came to Watkins Glen and did that race. Is this a great opportunity for audiences to see Shane Van Gisbergen's talent and potentially bigger opportunities for him outside supercars, similar to what Scott McLaughlin did?
Well, Joe, I think it's easy to forget. There's, I think, obviously a lot of overlap between the NASCAR and F1 side of things here at Grid Network and, among our connections in the world of motorsports media. But I think among the fan bases, Kimi Räikkönen and Shane Van Gisbergen would both be foreign names to a lot of NASCAR fans who, maybe only follow NASCAR exclusively. Maybe some of them would remember Kimi from his couple of starts in 2011. But, I think Shane Van Gisbergen is kind of in the same boat there as somebody that, the casual NASCAR fan certainly would not be familiar with, but is certainly a great, fantastic talent in the world of motorsports who I would hope could be welcomed with open arms by them. And, Justin Marks and Project 91 obviously are doing some great things to put spotlight on not just Kimi, but, whoever steps in that car in the 6 to 8 races that are expected next year. And I hope Shane is one of them because, he's, been so dominant in supercars, has nothing really left to prove over there. I would love to see how he could do in a stock car, and it would be kind of interesting to compare him to another supercar great, Marcus Ambrose, who had several full seasons to develop here in NASCAR here in the United States and did quite well, won a handful of road course races as well. So, I think he could do a solid job if he puts his mind to it and really commits to it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ben. I think Shane Van Gisbergen would do a solid job in NASCAR, but the thing is, we haven't seen next year's supercar schedule yet, so we need to see like what's the schedule is going to look like and which races are going to be available to put him in number 91 for Trackhouse Racing. But the article that Joe was referring to, it said that SVG is actually looking to potentially race with Trackhouse at the Chicago street course, and he has a lot of experience in the supercars on street courses, so that would definitely be his bread and butter. I guess in that aspect, he has an advantage. He would have an advantage over all the NASCAR drivers who are in the field who don't know anything about street racing at all. Well, Shane Van Gisbergen, just another day at the office for him. So I think that could potentially give him an advantage. And looking at the next generation supercars, there's a lot of common things with the supercar and the NASCAR Cup Series car. So I think that would also help out SVG as well. And one of the great things about the next gen car, minus all the safety issues that are going on with it, a lot newer technology that drivers from other disciplines are used to. So the transition, it won't be nearly as huge as it's been in the past with, say, older technology we saw with the Gen 6 car. But I think it would be a great opportunity for Shane Van Gisbergen to come over here and show what he can do, because we know he's certainly one of the best drivers in supercars. Yeah, and he's certainly going to be able to accomplish a lot more throughout his racing career. He's been to the 24 Hours of Le Mans. He's done a lot of sports car racing in the past. Supercar as legend, and now the World Rally Championship, and he could add NASCAR to his resume next year. So SVG Chicago Street Course, I like to see it. Hopefully they get a deal done, and the calendars will align.
It'll be really exciting to see if Shane Van Gisbergen could get that deal all in place. being a NASCAR. And just to say that Shane Van Gisbergen, a racer we've all followed through the grid ranking, one of the world's best drivers in NASCAR. That'll be huge. And it wasn't too long ago. We all remember when Scott McLaughlin was dominating the Supercar series. Now he's in IndyCar, had a great season, finished the IndyCar season, ranked in the grid ranking. First driver to do it in 2 different series, of course, different years, but very exciting. And the earliest the grid ranking has ever been decided was 2018 on November 18th. Shane Van Gisbergen, he could try to get that done in October. He wants to be the first Supercars champion to do that. Be very exciting. Be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube and follow us at Grid Ranking on Twitter.
Well, guys, I know it's been kind of a marathon show here after a marathon race at Texas. Let's wrap it up on a positive note. Joe, I'll go to you first. What's your one shining moment from this weekend?
My one shining moment has to be Jack Miller getting the win. Jack Miller, he is a crowd favorite at every race. After the races, usually you'll see him waving to the crowd. He'll stop somewhere, throw one or both of his gloves, sometimes even his shoes, to the fans, cheering, even if they're not fans of him. He just loves being in MotoGP. He's such a character, very positive. You have to compare him to another driver in another sport. I would say like a Daniel Ricciardo in F1. The fans tend to really love him. And overall, I think Jack Miller getting the win in such dominating fashion really showed what a lot of us anticipated from him when he joined Ducati. So that is my one shining moment.
And my one shining moment has to go to Xfinity regular Noah Gragson for winning four consecutive Xfinity races, tying a record set by Xfinity legend Sam Ard. So it has been incredible watching Noah Gragson grow as a race car driver in the last several years, and also goes to show that you don't necessarily have to rush a driver up to the NASCAR Cup Series after just one season. Noah Gregson's been in Xfinity for several seasons now, and he's really honed his craft and he's improved significantly over the years in Xfinity, and we all know he's going to be going to Petty GMS next year, replacing Ty Dillon in a number 42 Chevrolet as Eric Jones's teammate. And if I'm Petty GMS, I have to be really excited what I'm seeing from Noah Gragson in the Xfinity series this year, and he's certainly looking like the main championship favorite to potentially take it all under an Xfinity. It seems like Ty Gibbs, Noah Gragson, AJ Allmendinger, those are 3 of the main characters who people are probably going to expect to be in the championship 4. But as we know with this playoff but we all know this playoff system, anything is possible. But overall, what a job Noah Gregson's been doing these last few weeks, and he's certainly going to keep building this momentum so he can try to ride all the way to Phoenix and take it all.
Well, I will save most of my Xfinity analysis for tomorrow's show, obviously. I will say if the season finale were at the Charlotte Roval, AJ Allmendinger would be my championship pick. But season finales at Phoenix, I would say Noah Gragson is looking very strong at the moment. Before I get into my one shining moment, I understand we have one more comment in the chat room. I think it's from Chrome Diesel here, and we'll pull that up. The next-gen car was inspired by V8 supercars, the sequential gearbox, single lug, underbody aerodynamics. Some of that came from supercars. That's a very good point. That could bode well for SVG if he were to make his supercars debut with Project 91 sometime next season. In terms of my one shining moment, I want to give a call to Justin Haley, since unfortunately, as far as I know, please correct me if I'm wrong, if NBC posted an interview, I'd love to see it, but to finish third for Kaulig Racing was a great night. Unfortunately, he's not in the playoffs, so it seems like he's not going to get as much coverage from the mainstream media in this sport around this time of year, but it's still a great run for him and that team. I believe that equals their best finish of the season. I think they finished third at Darlington earlier this year as well. So a great run for them. And I also want to give a shout out to Alexander Rossi. Happy 31st birthday and congratulations on your engagement. I just saw the Instagram post there. So a bit of a positive note to end an otherwise negative day in the world of NASCAR, I think, on a lot of fronts. Great to see that for Alexander Rossi, and happy birthday to him as well.
Big congratulations to Alexander Rossi. And then tomorrow, Ben will be back on the air along with Brandon and Joshua as they recap the Xfinity Series, Moto2 and Moto3. Wednesday, Grid Tonight. Friday, the women in motorsports. So a lot. Don't miss out. Subscribe to us right here on YouTube. And a big thank you to our Patreon subscribers. Calling the show Mark and Robin for investing in the Grid Network. You can invest by clicking the link below. Join Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution. Buy a drink for your favorite on-air personality, myself, Ben, Kobe, Matthew, or anyone else on the Grid Network. And also be sure to use public.com to invest in the stock market, build your portfolio, and use the code GRIDnet to earn free stock. Get started and utilize the stock market for your investments. For Ben Schneider and Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samriego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.